Hi and welcome to our next section, section number 5, updating the board on changes. In this section we are going to take a look at subscriptions and how to set up our Apollo client for using WebSockets and updating a board card list and the cards. Then we will also see how the subscriptions extend the existing query response cycle. And finally, we also see a way for avoiding and handle conflicts of simultaneous modifications which will occur when two persons are changing a board simultaneously. But first, let's check out how we can set up and use the subscriptions in the playground. Before coding anything or integrating anything into our existing client, we will now set up subscriptions and use them in the playground. We will talk about how to use subscriptions on the client side in general again. And we can use the subscriptions with our local server because they are enabled out of the box. In the playground, we will discover the subscriptions. First, we will look into the Schema Explorer and find out what possibilities we have. Then, we will try out subscriptions by running them for board, list and cards. And of course, therefore, we can use our existing client to trigger these subscriptions by changing anything on our board. So let's directly jump into the playground. So as you can see here, I already opened the schema, the right side, and we will look into the part for subscriptions. And here you see for all our different types. So when we have a look into the board subscription here in the schema, we see that we have a where clause, which contains this argument here at the bottom. And as you might expect already, this can be used to filter and to specify or reduce the list of subscriptions. So we might only want to listen for changes on a specific board. So we would define it here with the ID. But because it's not so important to reduce the number of notifications at the moment, this might be something for optimizing later. So more interesting here is what can we get back. When I'm opening this for auto-completion, you see a mutation, a node. So update previous values also show us board with previous values. And these are all the possible parameters or the informations we can get. So at this moment, I will start this subscription. So as you can see here, we have a listening playground and it's waiting for some changes. At the moment, we can only trigger adding a new list here on the left side in our client. So let's start adding a new list. So the interesting thing here is, of course, first we have an updated board. Then the information here, which board has been updated, is typical board we have here. And the previous values are in this moment, of course, the same, but it just carries this information and we don't have changed update fields. So we might say, what has been changed? At this point, I will now switch over and would like to add a list subscription. So here the same, we have the list, which is a subscription, as we had here. And it's not different type in there. And of course the list. And of course here the node is a list or of type list. So when also starting this, we get all informations about changed lists. As we can expect now, when I'm adding a new list, this will be here the mutation for a newly created list. It's just mentioned here that it's created with the ID. And for some reason I forgot to add the name here, of course. I would have to restart this subscription here to see the next time also the name here, of course. just for demonstrating this. And additionally, I can also do the same thing with a subscription for the card. But let's do this before adding the new card also. We saw here we didn't have cards in this change. So let's create a card for the specific section for list here on the left side. And here, as we can expect it, we have the new list. So we get the whole list basically by this subscription because it was updated. And when we are fetching on the left side here in the query the whole node, of course we will get all the cards. And also looking back to the subscription here, of course, we see that the card was created. Similar, let's go one level up again. When we are adding new list, we will see now in the list subscription that we will get a new list in a second. Created a new list with this ID. And when we look into the board, we also see that the board was updated. And also here we are getting all the information, all the lists, because on the left side you see here I specified that we want to get all lists. So this should be typically the last we got after creating one. One more last interesting thing will be that we can also look into the network traffic. And we will start this board subscription. So as you can see here, we got a WebSocket connection, and we would have to look into the frames here. Here we will see the typical entries we will have when starting a subscription. In this case, we start here with specific payload because we are using this query here in the bottom. Just should give you an idea what this looks like. Basically, we are starting this subscription and we are registering on the server side. This is just a heartbeat message which gets sent every some seconds. But the important thing will be now when we create something or add something, then the server will send us back some information in this WebSocket connection. So here we go. After adding new list, we now get this as a payload via WebSocket. And here's the typical response as we saw in the playground before. I just wanted to give you this hook or this link, so if you are interested you can look into this by yourself. It's just the WebSocket connection we start from our client. Closing this again. This looks a little bit blurry because there's so much information and some rendering issues. But at the end this was the last result. After finding how this works in the playground, let's integrate that into our client. To get our client connected to these notifications from the server, we will use WebSockets